Okay, so please tell me if if you can see my screen, if the PowerPoint that I'm sharing is readable. Okay, now thank you to Dr. Darity for that introduction. So this is not my first time to join Rangsit International Conference. Okay, been joining them since 2018. Okay, so anyway, I would just like to start with this quotation coming from W. Edwards Deming. He said that in God we trust, all others bring data. So meaning, for us researchers, which is of course should be data driven, it is very important for us to have or to collect the data that we needed for the problems that we are facing. So that is very simple. However, at this point, because of the pandemic, there are some limitations. Okay, so we are looking into alternatives, not just like what our plenary speaker mentioned a while ago. So we should not stop the research, but instead we have to find alternatives in order for us to perform whatever we want to do for our research. Okay, so these are just some of my photos in 2018 and 2019. Anyway, so this would be my presentation outline. I have, of course, I know I have only 30 minutes. So hopefully I can share everything. But the main idea here is that for us to be able to understand the importance of having alternative tools. Wait, there's something wrong with my presentation. I'm sorry for that. I will just remove the... I do not know what happened. Okay, so let us see. I think, yeah. Okay, so that's the essence now of what we're trying to do here. So anyway, what is the impact of COVID-19? So as you can see, there are about 511 million total cases worldwide and deaths of about 6 million. So that's worldwide, but in the Philippines, this is how we were affected by the pandemic, okay? There were about 3 million of cases and then deaths of about 60,000, okay? So with everything that is happening, of course, if you're doing research, the risk is too high, okay? Whether you want to do direct interaction with your respondents or think of technologies that could help you with this. Okay, so basically that's a dilemma for us researchers. Okay, now what is the impact now of the COVID-19 pandemic and research? So basically there is a disruption to the traditional face-to-face. Aside from that, there's also field work. Field works were also suspended, as well as some of the laboratories were closed. Since some of the educational institutions at this point are having everything online. Aside from that, of course, all the researchers, students, and academics are affected by this situation, because we do have some limitations in performing some of the research activities. So even trainings has been disrupted. Okay. Now, there is this study conducted by these authors, now wherein they have simulated the non-COVID-19 studies. What they did is that they have predicted based on the previous data that they have, and then they have come up with that at this point the impact of the pandemic is that there was actually a decrease on non-COVID publication. But of course, for the COVID-19 publications, there was an increase. However, for the non-COVID, there was a decrease. So most likely, it's because of the pandemic. Okay, because at this point, it's very difficult for us to collect data. Okay, so as we all know, for research activities, we have the following. Okay, um, we have collection, analysis, and of course, interpretation of the things that we have collected. Now, collection is quite tricky at this point since as I mentioned, it's we're having a pandemic. Okay, you do not want to risk yourself and your team, or if in case in an educational institution, you do not want to risk your students to get infected by the virus. So the typical methods that we use, like paper and pencil, visiting the site to do observations, and the face-to-face interviews, were of course affected. Okay, because you have a lot of things to consider if you want to perform or still make use of these data collection methods. And with that, no, with that problem, okay, here are the challenges, no, that we've seen in some of the publications. So as you can see here, so there's this study, that was conducted by the government of Tanzania. It's for their public health facilities. They actually started when there's no pandemic. However, they have to somehow retool, and instead of having personal interaction with the respondents, they have to do everything fully remote. So the problem that they have challenges are the following. First is that the challenge is related to the project. So as you can see, the project is quite big. It involves a lot of respondents, and then another one would be the sharing of documents remotely in low network setting. So those are the problems that they have encountered, or the challenges that they have encountered in relation to the project scope. Now, another one is conducting data collection remotely. So they said that phone servers or phone survey at this point requires shorter, simpler instruments. So therefore, they have to review all the instruments that they're using if it's already too long, and then if you're going to use phone to conduct the survey, then they have to change so that it will be shorter, so to ensure quality and reduce fatigue for the respondents, and also quality control protocols. So they mentioned that common concern for collecting remotely is whether the information will be as reliable as when collected in person. Okay, so those were some considerations if you are to conduct everything remotely. So the lack of trust between the respondents and of course the one who's doing research. Now another would be for the number 3, okay, is that the lack of skills for their researchers, or for those who are doing data collection. And of course the building of trust without face-to-face interaction requires patience, because you're using technology, you're not with them in person with the respondents. So this one was a great problem to them. Now in this particular study, okay, so this one is in Jordan. Okay, so they use their creative thinking, to collect data. Now, in their study, they are required to do field work, similar to the previous case that I mentioned. So in this case, they have to do a hybrid solution. Okay, so those who are amenable or are accessible, no, to virtual sessions, then they can make use of that. No, they can use technology. However, for those who are using phone interviews, the problem is that some of the some of the some of the respondents uh, I mean, the feeling of course, if it's, especially um if it's something personal, okay, so the tendency is that they would just drop the phone call or refuse to continue. So these are the problems that they experience. Okay, and another one would be if you're doing a virtual session and then all members of the family are at home. So the problem with privacy is there. Whereas if you're doing face to face, you know that they are comfortable answering those questions. Okay, now and this particular study that you are seeing at this point, so this is again for health research context. So what they did is that they asked practice nurses on their satisfactory on the use of Zoom, for qualitative data collection. As we all know, it's very difficult to make use of um, interview, or especially qualitative research design if you're going to do the interview online. Okay, so however, they found out that this is actually good for them. So they said it is highly satisfactory. So they made use of Zoom, for their medium, and then other platforms as well. Okay, now, so what are the alternatives, okay, in doing a quantitative research, specifically in data collection? Okay, so for quantitative research, there's of course online survey. Pre-pandemic, a lot has already been using online survey or internet survey. Uh, More so now that we are in the pandemic. Okay, so basically these are just survey questions. So just like the phone interview, okay, you have to review your survey questions at this point, because you do not want to give them several pages of forms to answer. So you have to take into consideration also the length of the survey. Okay, so this is set out to a target sample, and members of the sample can respond to the questions over the World Wide Web. So basically, you create survey questions using a survey administration software, and then the link is shared over social media. You can share it with through Facebook, Twitter. There's also Messenger, and others, of course. If your respondents are members or employees of companies, then of course you cannot share that in social media, as you will see later in the analysis of our undergraduate programs. Um, if we're referring to customers, then you can share it using social media. But for employees, then we have to use at least email. Okay, now you see here some of the advantages. Aside from low risk in spreading of virus or getting the virus, then it's also faster real-time analysis, because these survey administration software, they have also an embedded computation of the row scores that you have. And then disadvantage is, of course, respondents' cooperation, because as you can see, if they will not click on the link that you have provided, then you'll not be able to collect anything. Okay. and then there's data reliability and digital divide, no? In some parts of, let's say, in our country, in the Philippines, okay, um, there are places, no, that wherein they do not have internet connection, so that would be a problem as well. So therefore, you have to think of your respondents. Are they do they have access, no, to these devices that you're going to use? Now, and in this particular study, okay, in UK, what they did is that they assessed, 10 free online survey tools, knowing that online survey is very beneficial for students or researchers. They review 10. Okay, so as you can see on my screen, you have their 10 online survey tools. But in the Philippines, majority of the students that we have, they're using, of course, Google Forms. Okay, now the criteria that for evaluation is ease of use, ability to export data. So meaning you can um, access, the raw data, and then of course you can manipulate, the data that you have collected. Now, so in their study, eServe was number one, specifically for non-personally identifiable information. But you have to also understand as well, the sensitivity of your data. You know, when you collect data, you do not just collect it, not just because you just want to collect it. You have to think of course, the privacy of the person. Okay, so those are the things that you have to consider. There is this recommendation, from this study, which is actually logical. We require students to conduct their research or their thesis, but if we cannot provide them, okay, some tools that can help them, collect data, then I guess we have to do something about it. So with this study, they are encouraging institutions to purchase a site license to allow the students free access to an appropriate online survey tool. Number one, it's better to have your own, simply because you know that the respondents will be protected because you are using a license, online survey, not just using a free online survey. It will also have an impact on your respondents as well, knowing that their privacy will be protected as well. Now, so that is for the quantitative research data. What about the qualitative? Okay, so the problem now here would be, in qualitative interview, research is unique because it says here that researcher is the instrument for data collection. So you have also to consider, your skills, your capabilities. I mean, it's different if you are doing the interview in person. It's also different if you're doing the interview online. Okay, you may be comfortable in using the technology or seeing yourself on in your computer. However, you have to consider as well your respondents, if they're comfortable enough in the use of the technology. Okay, so those are some of the considerations. So studies using data collected through the online interviews then add an important dimension. So at this point, no, it's not just it's not just the researcher, but also if you will be familiar with the technology that you're going to use, will you be comfortable using it? Will your respondents will also be comfortable using it? And also you have to think as well that in using a visual, and verbal exchange such as video conferencing, you think of their internet access as well. Maybe on your end, you have a sophisticated technologies or remote technologies for that matter. However, what about them? Okay, do they have access? So you do not consider only on your end as well as, of course, your respondents, because if they do not have access, then definitely you cannot connect, no, you cannot communicate with them because there would be problem in the access of technology. Okay, remember that it's not only in qualitative, it's not just only verbal but also non-verbal signals. So these are some of the considerations in qualitative. So we have here some, no, as suggested by Salmons in 2010. We have here some of the synchronous communication types for online interviews. It can also be text-based. Okay, however, now at this point, of course, since you also want to see nonverbal cues, then video conference or video call is actually very important. Okay. Now, there's also what we have here, multi-channel. Okay. Let me just see my screen. So anyway, so there's also multi-channel. Okay, you can communicate through audio, video, and text. So again, what should be considered here should be the technologies that they're using. Okay, and of course their connectivity as well. If there's a technology, now if they have access, then you can also have immersive 3D environment. Okay, now how about for the options for preparation? So how would you prepare, for interviews and follow-ups with participants? Then you can, for synchronous or real-time, there's also text message or instant message or chat. I think these are the ones that are readily available for us. But of course, you have multi-channel as well. Now you can also consider using shared applications. Okay, also to know that if they do understand that, no, shared applications is actually very effective. Okay, you can ask them to log in together and use web-based software applications, research tools or forms. You can make use of actually Google Sheet, no, to have them answer some questions. Okay, now what I have here is actually I have analyzed, the thesis data collection tools, of our students in the College of Business. So in the middle of the term, okay, so I asked them of what are the problems and issues they have encountered. And as you can see, rank number 1 is, of course, the pandemic protocols. They said that this extremely affected, their thesis progress. So meaning, if the government would say that we are on a lockdown, you cannot do anything about it. Okay, so lockdown, then you cannot leave your house. No, you have to stay indoors. Another would be sickness. Some of the students got sick, not just one member of the family. Sometimes all members of the family. So therefore, their work will be affected. And of course, there's also respondents, availability. I mean, if the respondents are not available, even if you are 100% as researchers ready, to conduct, the data collection, then nothing will happen because they would just simply say, we're busy, we do not have the technology, and we're doing something else. Or maybe they're not as comfortable in the use of technology. Okay. So another is, of course, the internet. With technology, of course, no, it's a must that you have a good internet connection. Okay. Now, so we have here the profile. So we have 27 groups now for this academic year. Majority of them, almost half from the tourism management. So anyway, now for the research design, majority, almost half is quantitative. They use quantitative research design. But there are some that also made use of qualitative, and then there's also those groups who made use of mix. And then of the degree, that use 100% of quantitative, so that is the accounting information, accounting information systems. And then the ones that use the qualitative, no, are the groups coming from the tourism management. Okay, so basically because they have to interview locals, no, the communities, no, regarding their tourism management. Okay, now as for the data collection, as I mentioned, since they use quantitative, majority of them use survey. So majority of them use online survey. And then for those who use qualitative, they have no choice. Since qualitative, they have to do either interview, okay, or a focus group discussion. And then majority of them use, for the hotel management, and then the AIS program as well. And TM, they made use, or the tourism management made use of interview. So it really depends on what is your research design. So those are the things that you have to consider. Okay, so these are just some of the pictures that was that happened with the students. Now, for the data collection technologies, as I mentioned, since it is majority of them are using quantitative, they use online survey, and it is found out that majority of them use Google Forms. I mean, it is readily available if you have a Gmail account. So basically, that's it. Now, as for the video teleconferencing, it's Zoom, and then we also have Microsoft Teams. Okay. Now, there are, I think, two groups that really have no choice because their schedule for online interview is always being postponed. So what they did is that they have conducted face-to-face interview. Okay. Now, for the channels, majority again, made use of social media platforms, basically because in the Philippines, as you can see, for Facebook alone, we have 74.6 million users, okay? And then all have access to 51.5 million as well. And for those who are, of course, for their respondents, employees, or companies, then they really have no choice but to resort to the use of email. So those were the channels being used. Now, one consideration, of course, in research is data privacies, more so in having it online. So what's good about all the groups, they have this data privacy and consent. So even if you're doing it online or doing it pen and paper, you still have to inform your respondents of data privacy. So here's just a screenshot of one of the Google Forms survey administration software that they use. Okay. Now for the conclusions and recommendations, always remember, it's actually very simple. Okay, it's garbage in, garbage out. Poor data will result to poor quality of solutions to problems. So meaning you really have to plan, you really have to strategize which one is the best method for you to collect data. May it be online or may it be in person. Okay. So evaluate different elements. So these are the things that you have to consider in data collection when using technology. The data that you will be collecting, will it be sensitive? Meaning, if you ask them, if they can share it with you, and then of course the data privacy, and of course how you would manage the data. Will it be deleted? Remember, this is digital. Okay, it can be shared easily online. So that's why sensitivity, privacy, and data management is actually very important. Now for the respondents, one thing that you can consider if it's online, it's their availability. Okay, if you will be doing an interview, for a company, what would be their most their availability, and then of course you have to review the instruments that you're going to use or the guide that you're going to use. The same as their digital capability. I mean, if you will be using Google Forms, do they know how to use it? And then access to technology as well. Okay, so that is the most thing that you have to understand. Even if you have the most sophisticated technology, if they do not have access to it, then they cannot answer it. Now, as for the researchers, definitely access to technology, digital capability, of course, your research capability. I mean, you have to evolve somehow, okay, because of the technology, and then your attitude, in learning, the new, ways or alternatives so that you can perform your research. Okay. Now, for the tools and technologies, consideration would be if it's for free or you will buy it. That is also have to be considered. If it's readily accessible, and then how to use it. Now, if all else fails and risk too high, what you need to do is to rethink your topic and research, because you may also considering using secondary data, because at the end of the day it would be your safety. So those are the things that you have to consider as well. Now here is some of the recommendations now on which method to use, depending on the target population, whether you have a phone based, or online FGDs and online surveys or online interviews. Okay, of course, what you have here, sorry for that, you can make use the three now you have here are low risk, because face to face is obviously higher risk of virus transfer. And then what would be your consideration? Phone, apps, smart devices, internet. Okay, so online FGDs, the sensitivity of the topic, which I already mentioned, and then the use of the same with the online surveys. Literate populations, meaning they know how to make use of technology. And then what would be your resources? Of course, your questionnaire, you have to revisit, you have to check it, maybe shorten it, or make it easy to answer. So those are the things that you have to check. Okay. And then, so same with the online surveys. Plus, I have here just some of examples that for each method. Okay. So basically, that's it. For my presentation. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you have questions, I have here my email. If you have questions regarding our or regarding my presentation. It's 11:44. Okay.